A very warm welcome to you. One is so glad you have found your way to this quiet place, a small sanctuary set aside for the sole purpose of gentle rest. This story has been created to be a soft and pleasant companion, a quiet murmur to help you find contentment and drift easily toward peaceful sleep. If this story brings you comfort, a simple like, a subscription to our quiet corner, or a kind comment is always deeply appreciated. Tonight, we will be visiting the Vale of Lingering Hues, a place where the final moments of sunlight are gathered like memories. We will meet a kind cartographer who uses magical inks to map the gentle beauty of each day's end. Here, among the whispering trees and glowing moss, you are invited to let go of all that is heavy, to breathe slowly, and to find a deep and lasting calm. Chapter 1. The Chalk Path to Quiet. It is a wonderful thing, after all, to find a path that asks for nothing but the gentle press of a footstep. The one that led Corwin into the Vale of Lingering Hues was just such a path, a soft white ribbon of chalk winding through meadows of deep green grass that smelled sweetly of clover and warm earth. It seemed to him that the very air was different here, softer somehow, as if it were spun from the silence of the valley itself. A languid current of air carrying the faint, honeyed scent of some distant blossom caressed his face, and with it, the last remnants of the world he had left behind seemed to drift away like dandelion seeds on a summer afternoon. The path did not hurry. It meandered in long, gentle curves around ancient, sleeping mounds of earth and groves of trees whose leaves shimmered a soft silver in the afternoon light. There was a profound peace in its unhurried design, a quiet reassurance that the destination would wait. Corwin found his own pace slowing to match it, his breath deepening, his shoulders, which had held the tension he had ceased to notice, finally beginning to yield. The only sounds were the soft crush of the chalk beneath his boots, a sound as gentle as falling snow, and the murmur of 1,000 leaves rustling in a harmonious chorus around him, each one whispering a secret of deep and abiding calm. As the sun began its slow descent, the light in the valley took on a truly wondrous quality. It became thick and golden, like liquid honey, pooling in the hollows and draping the sloping hills in a blanket of warm, benevolent light. This light seemed to have a texture, a soft weight that rested upon the world with a gentle touch, and it smelled faintly of baked earth and dried summer grasses. Corwin paused, resting a hand on the smooth, warm bark of a silver-barked tree, and simply watched as the light moved, painting the landscape in ever softer hues of amber and rose. It was a light that held no sharp edges, only a deep and peaceful glow that seemed to emanate from the very soil of the vale. He felt a deep sense of contentment settle upon him, as comforting and as solid as the sun-warmed wood beneath his palm. It was the feeling of arriving somewhere he had always been meant to be, a place whose rhythms were perfectly in tune with the quietest parts of his own heart. The air cooled slightly, carrying the fresh, clean scent of evening dew beginning to form on the countless blades of grass. He inhaled slowly, feeling the peaceful aroma fill him, a gentle balm for a soul he hadn't fully realized was weary. This was a place for rest, not the simple rest of the body, but a deeper restoration that seemed to reach into the very marrow of his being. The path eventually led him to a small cottage, nestled so perfectly into the landscape that it appeared to have grown there. It was built of smooth, dark wood and river stones, worn round by ages of flowing water, and a curl of pale gray smoke rose from its chimney in a slow, unwavering line. The scent of burning cedar wood, clean and comforting, now mingled with the valley's perfume. A small garden overflowing with herbs and night-blooming flowers, whose petals were just beginning to unfurl, was tucked beside it, humming with the gentle buzz of a few late bees. The cottage radiated a feeling of warmth, a quiet promise of sanctuary and simple comfort. Corwin approached the smooth wooden door, which stood slightly ajar in a gesture of silent welcome. Peeking through the opening, he could see the soft flickering light of a fire within, dancing across a cozy room filled with books and maps in the inviting shape of a well-loved armchair. The sound of the crackling fire was a low, steady murmur, a heartbeat for the little house. He felt the last of his own inner hurry dissolve completely, replaced by a profound sense of peace. He had arrived. The gentle weight of his journey was lifted, and he felt light enough to float on the quiet evening air. He stepped across the threshold, feeling the smooth, worn texture of the wooden floorboards under his feet. The interior of the cottage was even more comforting than he had imagined, a perfect haven of soft light and warm, comforting smells. The air was thick with the scent of cedar smoke, the papery aroma of old books, and a faint, sweet smell that he would later learn was the chronochroma ink Fennec used in his work. A man with kind eyes and a serene expression looked up from a large wooden table and offered a simple, warm smile that needed no words. This, Corwin knew, with a deep and certain calm, was exactly where he was supposed to be. The quiet librarian, whose life had been a study in the textures of silence, had found a new kind entirely. It was not the silence of empty rooms, but a living, breathing quiet, woven from the rustle of silver leaves, the soft glow of the evening light, and the gentle crackle of a welcoming hearth. He felt a gentle weight settle in his limbs, the pleasant heaviness of a body finally given permission to be completely at rest. Corwin smiled back at his host, a simple and sincere expression of gratitude, feeling the day come to a soft and perfect close around him. Chapter 2. A warm hearth and softer words. Fennec moved with a grace that seemed born of the valley's own unhurried rhythm. He poured a stream of steaming water into 2 earthenware mugs, the sound a gentle hiss that soon gave way to the fragrant cloud of chamomile and honey that rose to fill the warm air of the cottage. The texture of the mug in Corwin's hands was a comfort in itself, its surface smooth and radiating a deep, penetrating warmth that traveled up his arms, coaxing a final hidden layer of tension to release its hold. They sat in 2 large soft armchairs near the hearth, the fire crackling and whispering its soft, contented songs to the room. The firelight painted their faces in gentle, flickering strokes of orange and gold, and the pleasant scent of burning cedar wood was a constant, reassuring presence. For a long while they simply sat, sipping the warm, sweet tea that tasted of summer fields and peaceful afternoons. The silence between them was not empty, but full, a shared space of comfort and mutual understanding that needed no filling. Outside the single large window, the world was deepening into shades of violet and indigo, and the first stars began to appear, their light soft and distant. The only sounds were the murmur of the fire, the quiet sips of tea, and the gentle, almost inaudible hum of the stream flowing just beyond the cottage walls. Corwin felt as though he were enveloped in a cocoon of warmth and safety, a feeling he hadn't realized how much he had longed for. Eventually, Fennec spoke, and his voice was much like the valley itself, low and calm, with a gentle, melodic quality. He did not ask Corwin about his journey, or the world he had come from, but instead spoke of the simple things around them. He spoke of the stream, and how its song changed with the seasons, from a bright chatter in the spring to a deep, slow murmur in the autumn. He described the personalities of the whisperwood trees, how some were old and quiet, and others seemed to enjoy a good rustle in the evening breeze. His words were not a conversation so much as a gentle narration of the peace that surrounded them, weaving a tapestry of sounds and feelings that drew Corwin even deeper into the moment. The firelight cast long dancing shadows on the walls, which were lined with shelves holding not just books, but also countless rolled maps, each one tied with a simple piece of twine. Corwin could see that each map had a small, neat label, noting a specific day from a season past. He imagined each scroll holding the light and warmth of a particular sunset, a library of gentle endings, the scent of the old parchment, and the sweet, earthy aroma of the inks mingled with the smell of the fire, creating a unique perfume of cozy contentment. He felt a deep appreciation for this quiet man and the gentle, meaningful work he performed in this peaceful corner of the world. Fenwick gestured toward the window where the last sliver of ruby light was now fading from the horizon. He spoke of the light as if it were a living thing, a visitor that came each day to paint the valley before taking its leave. He described how the light's mood could change, sometimes leaving in a great, celebratory flourish of color, and other times slipping away quietly in soft, muted tones. Listening to him, Corwin began to see the dusk not as an ending, but as a slow, beautiful performance. He felt his own perspective shifting, softening, becoming more attuned to the subtle wonders he had so often overlooked. As the room grew darker, the fire became the heart of their small world, its warmth a tangible presence on their skin. Fenwick rose, his movements fluid and slow, and lit a single candle on the table. The flame bloomed into life, a soft, steady point of golden light that cast a gentle, unwavering glow, making the shadows recede and soften. The faint, sweet scent of beeswax filled the air, adding another layer to the room's comforting atmosphere. The simplicity of the act, the creation of this small, intimate circle of light, felt profound to Corwin, a quiet ritual against the encroaching night. Later, they shared a simple meal of warm bread, soft cheese, and baked apples. The bread had a wonderfully yielding texture and a comforting yeasty smell, and its warmth spread from Corwin's stomach through his entire body. The flavors were simple and honest, tasting of the earth and the sun. They ate slowly, a comfortable quiet settling between them once more, punctuated only by the soft sounds of their meal and the ever-present crackle of the hearth. There was no need for conversation. The shared experience of the warm food and the peaceful room was communication enough. When it was time to rest, Fenwick showed Corwin to a small, simple room where a bed had been turned down, its quilt thick and soft to the touch. The window was open just a crack, allowing the cool night air and the gentle sounds of the valley to drift in. Corwin could hear the murmur of the stream, and, faintly, the gentle rustle of the whisperwood trees. He felt an immense sense of gratitude as he lay down, the mattress yielding softly beneath him. The gentle weight of the quilt was a final, comforting reassurance. He felt his body grow heavy, his mind quiet, and he drifted into a deep and peaceful sleep, surrounded by the soft, benevolent quiet of the Vale. Chapter 3. The Language of the Last Light. The next evening, as the sun began its descent once more, Fenwick gave a gentle nod toward the door. Corwin understood the silent invitation and followed him out of the cottage's warm, cedar-scented embrace and into the cooling air of the oncoming dusk. Fenwick carried a worn leather satchel that clinked softly with the sound of glass jars, and under his other arm he held a rolled sheet of thick, cream-colored parchment that seemed to drink in the golden light. They walked without speaking, their footsteps making soft, rhythmic impressions on the chalk path, a sound as gentle as a slow and steady heartbeat. The air smelled of damp earth, and the sweet, heavy perfume of night-blooming jasmine beginning to stir. They climbed a gentle slope to a spot that overlooked the entire western sweep of the valley. From here, the world seemed vast and incredibly peaceful. The slow, winding river was a ribbon of molten gold in the fading light, and the whisperwood trees stood as silent, silver-barked sentinels against a sky that was beginning its breathtaking transformation. Fenwick unrolled the parchment on the soft, mossy ground, its texture feeling resilient and full of potential beneath Corwin's fingertips. He then opened his satchel and withdrew several small, stoppered glass jars. Corwin watched, fascinated, as Fenwick uncorked them one by one. Inside each jar was a thick, viscous liquid that swirled with a faint internal light, like captured starlight. These were the chronochroma inks, and even in their jars they seemed to hum with a quiet energy. One held the deep, velvety purple of a coming night, another the soft, warm pink of a cloud's edge, and a third, the impossibly rich gold of the sun's last direct ray. Fenwick laid them out carefully, alongside a set of brushes with handles of smooth, polished wood, and bristles that were as soft as milkweed fluff. He then took out a stick of charcoal, its surface dusty and dark, and sat with a posture of perfect, patient stillness. As the sun touched the horizon, a hush seemed to fall over the valley. The breeze stilled, and the rustling of the leaves softened to a mere whisper. Fenwick closed his eyes for a moment, simply breathing in the atmosphere, feeling the temperature of the air on his skin, listening to the world's quiet exhalation. Then he opened them, and with a swift, sure movement, his charcoal stick began to whisper across the parchment. He did not draw the shapes of the hills or the river, but rather the flow of the light itself, the lines of warmth, and the pools of encroaching shadow. The sound was deeply soothing, a dry, soft scratching that was the only counterpoint to the valley's deep silence. When the sketch was complete, the sky was a magnificent tapestry of color. Fenwick selected a brush, its wooden handle smooth and familiar in his hand, and dipped it into the jar of golden ink. Corwin watched, holding his breath, as the ink on the brush seemed to brighten, to resonate with the golden light that still lingered on the highest peaks. As Fenwick touched the brush to the paper, the color that flowed from it was not merely gold, but the very essence of that final, warm sunlight. It held the light's temperature, its gentle, fading energy. A soft, warm glow spread across the parchment, and the air around it filled with the faint, sweet scent of sun-warmed hay. Fenwick worked with a focused and serene grace. Moving from one color to the next, he captured the soft, dusky rose that brushed the undersides of the clouds, and the deep, peaceful indigo that was gathering in the valley floor. Each stroke of the brush was deliberate and loving, a gesture of deep respect for the beauty of the moment. As he worked, Corwin noticed the lumen moss at their feet beginning its own quiet magic. It started as a faint glimmer, then slowly brightened into a steady, soft golden glow that illuminated their peaceful work, its low, resonant hum a gentle bass note in the symphony of the twilight. The warm light from the moss felt as gentle as the firelight in the cottage. Corwin felt no desire to speak, nor even to think. His entire being was focused on the simple, profound act unfolding before him. He was a part of the stillness, a silent observer of a quiet conversation between the artist and the day. He could feel the peacefulness of the scene seeping into him, his own inner world becoming as calm and as beautifully colored as the sky above. The soft textures of the moss beneath him, the delicate scents of the inks in the night air, the wondrous sight of the glowing map coming to life, all combined to create a state of perfect, meditative presence. When Fenwick finally set down his last brush, the sky was filled with stars, and the map on the ground before them glowed with a soft internal light, a perfect miniature reflection of the sunset that had just passed. It pulsed with a gentle warmth that Corwin could feel even from where he sat. Looking at the map, he felt the same sense of awe and deep peace he had felt watching the real sky. Fenwick had not simply painted a picture. He had preserved a feeling, a moment of sublime tranquility, and its gentle magic now radiated out into the cool, dark air, a small warm beacon of a day well and gently ended. Chapter 4. A Stillness Woven from Hues. The following days settled into a rhythm as gentle and predictable as the rise and fall of the sun. Corwin found he no longer thought of time in terms of hours or minutes, but in the slow, graceful transition of light. He would spend the afternoons in quiet companionship with Fenwick, sometimes reading in the soft armchair as the pleasant, earthy scent of simmering soup filled the cottage, or walking the chalk paths alone, feeling the yielding texture of the ground beneath his feet and listening to the soft, layered whispers of the whisperwood trees. His mind, once a place of busy thoughts and quiet anxieties, became as still and clear as the valley's stream. He began to notice the world in a new way, with a richness of detail that filled him with a quiet wonder. He saw the intricate, lace-like patterns, the dew made on a spider's web in the morning, each droplet a tiny prism for the new day's light. He would sit by the stream, watching the water flow over the smooth, mossy stones, the sound a constant, soothing murmur that seemed to wash his thoughts clean. He learned to distinguish the different scents carried on the breeze, the sharp, clean fragrance of crushed mint from the garden, the sweet, heavy perfume of the honeysuckle that climbed the cottage walls, and the simple, honest smell of warm, fertile earth. Each evening he would accompany Fenwick to the gentle rise, and the ritual of mapping the dusk became the peaceful anchor of his day. He ceased to see it as a magical act he was observing, and began to feel it as a shared meditation. He would sit on the soft, springy moss, feeling the last of the day's warmth seeping up from the ground into his body. A gentle, pleasant weight. He learned the quiet joy of simply being, of letting the senses absorb the world without the need for analysis or judgment. The sight of the sky's colors melting one into another was enough. The sound of the charcoal whispering across the page was enough. The feeling of the cool evening air on his skin was enough. One evening, a soft rain began to fall just as they settled in their spot. The drops were warm and gentle, landing on the parchment, and his skin with a soft patter that was more a caress than a sound. The air filled with the rich, deep scent of petrichor, the smell of rain on dry earth, a fragrance that spoke of life and replenishment. Fenwick did not pack up his supplies. Instead, he simply smiled and chose a different set of inks from his bag, ones that seemed to shimmer with a silvery, aqueous light. He began to map the feeling of the gentle rain, the soft gray of the clouds, and the way the world seemed to grow quiet and hushed beneath the soft percussion of the water. Corwin closed his eyes, tilting his face up to the sky. He felt the soft, cool touch of the raindrops on his eyelids and cheeks, each one a tiny momentary blessing. The world was reduced to sound and scent and texture, the gentle drumming of the rain on the leaves and the earth, the clean, life-giving smell of the air, and the feeling of the water trickling softly through his hair. A profound sense of release washed over him, as if the rain were cleansing not just the land, but his own spirit as well. He felt a simple, pure gratitude for this moment, for its gentle, unhurried beauty. When he opened his eyes, Fennec was holding out the finished map. It glowed with a soft, pearlescent light, and looking at it, Corwin could hear the sound of the rain and smell the scent of the damp earth. The map did not depict a sunset, but a state of being, a perfect, quiet moment of gentle introspection. He felt a deep connection to this place, to this man, and to the simple, profound magic they shared. It was a magic that did not command or transform, but simply noticed and appreciated the inherent beauty of the world as it was. His own breath felt effortless in his chest, rising and falling in a slow, even rhythm that matched the gentle pulse of the falling rain. He felt the comforting weight of his own body, fully supported by the soft earth beneath him. There were no more questions in his mind, no need to understand or to seek. There was only the quiet acceptance of the present moment, a stillness woven from the soft hues of twilight, the murmur of the rain, and the warm, steady glow of the lumen moss that lit their path as they walked back to the cottage through the now darkening, peaceful valley. This, he realized, was the deep and abiding rest he had been searching for. It was not something to be found, but something to be allowed. It was the simple, profound peace that arises when one finally stops striving and simply allows oneself to be. He carried this feeling back to the cottage, the sensation of the rain and the glow of the map held gently within his own quieted heart, a treasure of pure and simple contentment. Chapter 5. Carrying the Dusk Within. On the morning of Corwin's departure, the valley was veiled in a soft silver mist that softened every edge and muted every color, wrapping the world in a profound and gentle silence. The air was cool and carried the clean, damp scent of the wet earth and leaves. Inside the cottage, the fire in the hearth crackled with its usual comforting warmth, its golden light pushing back the gray morning. Fenwick handed Corwin a warm mug of tea, its chamomile fragrance a familiar, soothing balm. They sat for a time in their usual chairs, the silence between them comfortable and filled with a quiet sense of completion. Fenwick did not offer words of farewell, for nothing was truly ending. Instead, he rose and went to the large wooden chest that rested against one wall. He lifted the heavy lid, and a wonderful scent of old wood, dried herbs, and ancient parchment drifted out. From within, he carefully lifted a small rolled scroll tied with a simple leather cord. He brought it to Corwin and placed it gently in his hands. The parchment felt soft and resilient, and Corwin knew, even before he saw it, what it was. Was the map of the very first dusk he had witnessed in the Vale, the one that had filled him with such a sense of homecoming. A feeling is lighter to carry than a memory, Fenwick said softly, his voice a low murmur that blended with the crackle of the fire. Corwin carefully untied the cord and unrolled the map across his lap. It glowed with the same gentle, warm light he remembered from that first evening. The deep golds, soft roses, and tranquil purples swirled together, pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm like a sleeping heart. As he gazed into its colors, he felt the same profound sense of peace wash over him. the warmth spreading through his chest, the quiet settling in his mind. The sweet, warm scent of that long-past sunset rose from the page, a tangible fragrance of pure tranquility. He looked up at Fenwick, his heart full of a gratitude that was too deep for words. The quiet cartographer simply smiled, a gentle, knowing expression that conveyed a perfect understanding. The gift was not the map itself, but the peace it held. It was a tangible piece of the valley's calm, a reminder that the stillness he had found here was now a part of him, something he could access whenever he needed. Corwin carefully rolled the map and secured it, the feel of the soft parchment a final, reassuring tactile memory of his time in the cottage. His departure was as quiet and unhurried as his arrival. He stood at the cottage door, taking in the scene one last time. The warm, inviting glow of the firelight, the pleasant scent of cedar and old books, the serene presence of his kind host. He felt a gentle weight in his limbs, the pleasant heaviness of being fully rested and restored. There was no sadness in his leaving, only a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had come seeking a different kind of quiet, and he was leaving with a stillness that resided deep within his own soul. As he stepped back onto the chalk path, the mist had begun to lift, and soft shafts of morning light pierced through the canopy of the whisperwood trees, illuminating the silver bark and dew-drenched leaves. The path seemed to welcome his footsteps, its soft, yielding surface a familiar comfort. He walked slowly, breathing in the cool, clean air, feeling the gentle pulse of life in the waking valley. The murmur of the stream was a soft farewell, and the leaves of the whisperwood trees rustled, releasing a gentle chorus of past peaceful moments that seemed to wish him well. He carried the small scroll in his satchel, but he could feel its gentle warmth and quiet glow as if he were holding it against his heart. The map was a key, a portal back to the feeling of profound calm. He knew that in the world beyond the veil, with its own rhythms and sounds, he would be able to unroll this small piece of parchment, breathe in its scent of a peaceful dusk, and find his way back to the quiet center within himself. The valley had given him a gift of immeasurable value, the knowledge that peace is not a place to be visited, but a feeling to be carried. He reached the edge of the vale, where the chalk path gave way to a more common earthen track. He paused and looked back one last time, seeing the valley bathed in the soft, hopeful light of a new day. He felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet joy that resonated through his entire being. He had arrived weary and had left restored, carrying the gentle, glowing essence of 1,000 peaceful sunsets within him. And with a final, slow breath of the valley's sweet air, he turned and continued on his way, his own heart a quiet map of the dusk.